Hey Nigel, you ready to do a video?
I guess, what did you have in mind?
I was thinking about doing a console review.
Oh, we are finally pulling that lever. What's the topic? A classic like the Super Nintendo, perhaps the original PlayStation, or better yet, an underrated gem like the Sega Saturn?
Those are great consoles, and I had something newer in mind.
I'm sorry, what?
I know I said we wouldn't tackle anything past the 2000s, but I came across this and I think we really need to cover it. And mark my words, this will be one of our best videos. So follow me! Alright, bring it out!
It's not too late to do the Sega Saturn.
That's right, y'all. Today we're going to poke around the Evercade VS home console, or more specifically, the Evercade VSR system released back in 2024 as a more affordable version of the original VS console. I know I'm kind of late to the party on this one. That's partly because I only learned about these guys in the past year, which makes sense due to Evercade being run and distributed by Blaze Entertainment out of the UK. But after catching wind of these guys and reading more about what they're doing, it kind of piqued my interest. A company releasing old retro games via updatable cartridge on their own hardware just ticks the right boxes in my opinion. As far as I was aware, these days Nintendo was the only company still fooling around with cartridges, and that's debatable with the Switch 2 because those things are more or less overpriced data keys than actual cartridge. And that's the problem I'm having with modern gaming. The ever-growing push toward digital only. It just spells doom for the consumer and game preservation across the board. So something like this popping up on my radar, it just seemed to fit in my wheelhouse because I will always be an advocate for physical media. I grew up with it. I collect it. I can sleep better knowing that my games won't get delisted off my shelf, like various titles stuck in licensing limbo right now. A certain Turok game comes to mind. But here's the question. Is the Evercade worth the gamble? Well, let's crack one of these babies open and see. Hey, open this for me. Thanks, pal. Here we have the Evercade VSR. I decided to go with the base option instead of one of the bundles they had, like the Tomb Raider Activision bundle, mostly to see what someone on a budget would get as opposed to going all in from the start. The packing is kind of box standard. It's not bad. You got a list of cartridges on the back and available features. And for the sake of testing, I bought two of the carts seen on the back, Legacy of Kain Collection and the first volume of the Duke Nukem Collection. After popping the top, we get a look at the VSR itself, and it's a lot smaller than I thought it would be. On the front, we see 4 USB controller ports, reminding me a lot of the old N64 days, which is a good thing. You want to impress me? Bring back split-screen multiplayer. Another nice touch is the hood, or the door for the cartridges. Very reminiscent of the NES with its door. Turning around, we only have one video output for HDMI and mini USB for power. Kind of a bummer because I'd really like to see more video options on the back of this thing if you're wanting to go more retro, because HDMI emulators really don't like TVs of a certain age. If they're not within the past 10 years, they kind of want to mess with the picture a little bit. Kind of a nitpick on my part, but yeah. Now digging through the packaging, we get one controller. Kind of a bummer, but considering Nintendo did the same thing with their NES Classic, it's alright. Plus the controller isn't anything to sniff at. It's got a nice weight and size to it. At face value, there are a lot of nods to old retro hardware. The square shape is akin to the original Nintendo controller, and the face buttons are a nice nod to the Super Nintendo, with the start and select button being akin to the second version of the Sega Genesis controller. And turning it over, we see we got 4 buttons akin to the PlayStation controller. And I'm pretty sure there's a couple more nods here and there to other controllers. These were the ones I picked up out of the package. The shoulder buttons are a little thinner than I like, but they got a decent click to them. But sadly, after gushing about the controller, the unpacking kind of goes sideways from here. The only thing left in the box is a single micro USB cable with no power brick. This brings me back to a beef I had Sony when they released their PlayStation Classic a couple of years ago. How hard is it to put a little power brick in with your retro console? Hell, Nintendo included power bricks in both of their consoles in the form of these branded charging bricks. And of course that's not a tall order these days, because just scrounging around, Nigel came up with these 3. But the truly egregious thing is there's no HDMI cable for the console in the box. You have to buy it separately. Listen, I can forgive a lot. The lack of power brick, fine. You could power mini USB off a lot of things. Heck, you could power it off your TV if you got the right setup. But if your home console that you're going to hook up to a TV or monitor needs HDMI to be functional out of the box, then it needs to have a f***ing HDMI cable in the box. To quote an asshole out of New Jersey, what were they thinking? Thankfully, the creator of this wonderful show refurbishes consoles as a side gig, so he had everything we needed. Hi, don't mind us. You get back to work. You need to fund my little Debbie addiction.
Okay.
After all, I don't think Nigel's OnlyFans is going to go anywhere. I don't think he understands what OnlyFans is. Now, while Nigel is getting us hooked up, let's go over the cartridges real quick. Just like the controller and the console, there's a decent amount to unpack here. Not the actual cartridges, they're kind of tiny, but the aesthetic itself. Many fans of Sega have probably already spotted this. The cases are very much inspired by the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. In comparison to the original case, it's not a one-to-one recreation. The Evercade is smaller, about half the size of the OG. Just like the olden days, it comes with a manual. For some of you younger people, I know you're probably getting tired of hearing older gamers bitch about this, but you have to understand, we grew up in a time when we memorized game controls either while we were on a long car ride or while we were taking a dump. We didn't have phones to look all this shit up. We just pulled out the manual and read it in our off time. This is what we did. And I don't care what anyone says. These manuals will always be superior to what y'all get nowadays. Look at this. This is an ad for another game in the game that I just bought. Evercade, you are getting your points back, slowly but surely, but I am still perturbed about that HDMI cable. Now the cartridges themselves, I don't really see any visible nod to other carts. I guess if you squint your eyes and pop your jaw, they kind of look like a cross between a Sega Game Gear and a Game Boy. It's kind of a stretch, but that's just me. If y'all see any nods, hit me up. I'd be glad to hear what y'all think. Nigel's got us ready. Let's rock. Okay, menu looks fine. Music's a bit annoying though. I get what they were going for, it's just not my cup of tea. Alright Nigel, go ahead and pop in a game. Ooh, cool. Pop in the other one. Oh, dude, that's awesome. And it's appropriate considering what just got loaded in. Now, opening a game, you get a startup menu with the control layouts, a bio, and a summary of the story for each game. Okay, kind of cool. But starting up the actual game is kind of slow, though. For the simpler platforms, the wait is shorter, but for the 64-bit games, it was upward about 25 seconds. Kind of meh, but not too bad considering after the initial startup, I didn't see many loading screens, and the ones that I did were kind of a blink and you miss it affair. Now first up, Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain. Now if you're not familiar with this game, the story begins with Kain, the youngest son of one of them fancy ass families, is ambushed and killed in a village somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
End it. Now.
After his death, he awakens in the underworld, met by kind of a creepy necromancer, Mortanus, who offers him a chance for vengeance. Kain accepts becoming a vampire and discovers that he has gained supernatural powers, but also a thirst for blood. As Kain embarks on his quest for revenge, he learns about the Pillars of Nosgoth, which are mystical structures that maintain the balance of the world. Each pillar is associated with a member of the Circle of Nine, a group of powerful sorcerers who have become corrupt. Kain's goal is to defeat the sorcerers and reclaim his humanity, but in the progress, he begins to embrace his vampiric nature and becomes corrupted himself. Now, full disclosure, I own this on the original PlayStation and digitally on the PlayStation 3. Here, it's the same damn game, aside for some quality of life improvements, like save states, practically no load times, and a new visual mode called Retro Mode for sharper pictures. The Evercade also offers to either play this game in the original aspect ratio or full screen. I preferred pixel perfect over full screen. Full screen looks like a mess at times. Aside from that, there's really nothing unique here other than playing it on something that isn't a Sony console. I mean, it's alright, but I don't know. Let's switch gears. Let's try Soul Reaver next, the famous sequel to Blood Omen. Now, again, for sake of context, the story is Soul Reaver follows Raziel, a vampire turned wraith, on his quest for revenge against his former master Kain, the protagonist from the previous game, while uncovering the dark history of Nosgoth and the Soul Reaver's sword. And again, it's Soul Reaver. It's the same exact game that we played all the way back on the PlayStation, complete with popping walls and distorted polygons. And I admit, I wasn't expecting anything on the level of the remaster, but this is it. I really don't see a point to owning this unless you really wanted to play the original Soul Reaver in its original state. Even though Blood Omen wasn't uncommon, Soul Reaver was even more widespread than its predecessor. Throw in the remaster that fixes all the graphic and sound hiccups to the original, gives buyers even less reason to get this game. Plus the final nail in the coffin, the Soul Reaver remasters are the same price as the Evercade cart across the board. The only real benefit I see to owning this is to have Blood Omen and Soul Reaver on the same cart. If their focus is going to be on fairly common games, it's not going to shape up well for the Evercade. But that's the thing. Common. Which brings us to the other cart. the Duke Nukem Collection, including the remaster for the first 2 Duke Nukem games. Now, I've been looking forward to this for a while because I never actually played the original 2 games due to the availability was only on original hardware, meaning shareware or the old floppies. And since Gearbox rarely makes good financial decisions, they have never released these games on any platform until now. So, how do they look? Yeah, they're not much to look at, but this is how the Duke got his start. Story-wise, the antagonist of the game, Dr. Proton, has built an army of Technobots, advanced mechanized killing machines designed solely for annihilation. His first major target is Earth's largest city, which he invades and devastates. All military resistance fails, forcing the CIA to recruit Duke Nukem to defeat the bad guy and save the world. Yeah, kind of a simple, stupid story, but that's all you really needed for these games because at the end of the day, it's a 2D platformer with a maze layout. Sure, it's not the 80s action simulator that most of us are familiar with, but it still gets the job done. It's fun. Sure, it's a bit repetitive, but in the right mindset, I can see this being a nice evening of playing through a lost treasure. And the sequel improves everything from the first game immensely.
I am back.
Continuing off from the last game, Duke is enjoying his fame and fortune as a national hero after defeating Dr. Proton in the first game. And while he's enjoying his life, it kind of takes a turn for the worse while promoting his book, Why I'm So Great, on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Okay, definitely 90s. He's abducted by aliens who reveal their plan is to enslave Earth using powerful mind control devices to broadcast through television to turn humanity into docile servants. They intend to extract Duke's brain to power their artificial intelligence to ensure that they're victorious. Well, Duke doesn't take well to this and breaks out of prison and starts blowing everything up. Duke 2 still brings its A game. The level structure can feel a little maze-like at times, but the controls, the action, the visuals, everything is improved across the board. And it was the second game where Duke really started to feel like himself. It began to flesh out who he was. Think of it as the Evil Dead 2 of games, where in the second game they actually started to flesh out the protagonist of the story. But remember to bring your big gamer pants, because this game will kick your ass. And ironically, this is the only game out of the whole lot that hard-baked the emulation menu in the actual game, whereas the other 2 games were just ported with their original menus. The emulator menu was kind of off to the side as its own separate thing. Now let's go ahead and end this trip with Duke Nukem 3 Total Meltdown. It's not my favorite FPS game, but I do try to play this at least once a year. The full story is Earth is in the middle of an alien invasion while Duke is making his way back from the second game. His ride is shot down, they stole our chicks, it's time to kick ass and chew bubblegum. And that's the story of Duke Nukem 3. Don't need much, just to blow shit up and shoot a bunch of aliens and pig cops in the face. But as far as the Evercade's foray into Total Meltdown, is there anything unique? First off, this is the PlayStation port of the US version of Total Meltdown, meaning it only comes with 3 episodes plus the episode exclusive to the PlayStation, Plug and Pray. And I wasn't a big fan of this port. The music is different from the PC port. It's not bad, but I am not a big fan of it. Plus the controller layout is kind of weird. You hold down the L2 button for alternate actions like to scroll, use items, and to activate the mighty boot. Once you get the hang of it, it's not bad, but it's got a steep learning curve. But at its core, this is still very much Duke Nukem 3D. And I mean that in every sense of the word. At times it kind of does look like Duke is suffering from cataracts, but it could be worse. It could be the N64 port. I may not be a fan of the PlayStation music, but at least it actually has music.
Shooting up my ride.
And on top of that, the N64 was notorious for its censorship all throughout the game. Funny for an M-rated game targeted toward adults, blood and gore was fine, but a stripper on a pole, that's just too much. But the N64 did have some really cool stuff. For starters, it looks better than the PlayStation version. What you're seeing right now is footage captured off an actual Nintendo 64. as opposed to the version that we're getting emulated on the Evercade. Now, this isn't a fault of the Evercade, this is the fault of the original PlayStation. The PlayStation's visuals always were inferior to the N64. If you don't believe me, just look at the screen. But also, the N64 had unique weapon sprites for the game. Instead of a rocket launcher, it had a grenade launcher that we've all come to know and love if you played Ion Fury. And yet again, I think that's where the Evercade kind of misses an opportunity here. There's enough space on this cartridge for them to actually stick the N64 version of Duke Nukem on here. And it would have been a nice touch just to have both of these games on here to play one to see how the other one differs. And since it's the original 4 episodes of the PlayStation, there's more than enough space on this cartridge for the N64 version, because all these Evercade cartridges can hold at least 2 gigabytes. And the N64 version was probably 600 megabytes, if that. The PlayStation was also around the same size, so I could have seen them putting this on the cart. I guess I may be asking a little much since it already has Duke 1 and 2 on here. But still, if this is all there is, I find it kind of lacking. Kind of a bummer to end this playthrough on such a downer, but as it stands, there's no real advantage or incentive to play these 3 games on the Evercade as opposed to elsewhere. The only unique game and clear win was the remaster of Duke Nukem 1 and 2, because other than the original release, it was stuck on original hardware. Evercade having this is a nice advantage. That's exactly what I want to see from these guys. You may be thinking that I'm being a little hard on this thing, but at the end of the day, I want to see Evercade succeed. I am very much in favor of this thing, but I'm not its worst enemy. This is. If you don't know what this is a cheap ROM stick made to look like a PS5. You can find these things on Amazon, eBay, Temu, any marketplace that you can think of. You can probably find one of these things on it. And they are dirt cheap because the cost of making these things are little next to nothing. And they have hundreds of games on them. Some of them won't even start up, while the rest of them either run like dog shit or just fine. But that's the thing, it's a cheaper alternative as opposed to the Evercade. If Evercade is going to do this, they need to add their own personal touch. Either make their own custom levels for existing games to give you a reason to own this, or at least putting a little bit more spin on the emulator. Hard bake it into these games, put a little bit more effort into these ports. Give me a reason to want to play these over somewhere else. And going back to the menu for the Evercade, there is a catalog of current games available for the systems, and I thought maybe I wasn't being fair judging this system by these 2 carts alone. And right now there is a good bit available. There's a lot of gems and some clunkers, like seriously, was there a big demand for the NES version of Karate Champ and Bad Dudes? But I will give credit when it's due. Blaze Entertainment put in the legwork to get support from a lot of publishers. Hell, getting Gearbox on board is praiseworthy enough. And it seems that they're going full steam ahead with the release of Duke Nukem 0 Hour and Land of the Babes. All that's left is the Manhattan Project, and we're all set for the 3D platformers for Duke Nukem. But it's not just Gearbox, you also got Activision, Sony, Rare, and SNK who all signed up for this. Granted, the last one isn't as impressive since you can literally sneeze and find one of SNK's emulators. But at the end of the day, that's how potential buyers should look at Evercade in their system. Not on the individual releases, but on the package as a whole. Even though some of these games have superior remasters or are available on compilations for other hardware, as seen right here, Evercade is trying to bring this all under one roof. A more affordable and less intimidating way to get people into retro gaming. For example, let's say you want to get into retro gaming, but you ain't got the space for multiple platforms. That's where Evercade comes in with their one system. And if you don't want the VSR, cool, try one of their mini handhelds. All Evercade cartridges are cross-compatible with existing hardware. And it seems that Blaze is constantly updating or coming out with new hardware. At the time of making this video, Evercade dropped a new controller for the VS system and a new handheld console with joysticks. Looks like a certain Steam machine if you ask me, but hey, good job! And that's the one thing that really stood out to me. Evercade is constantly trying to improve through feedback from their customer and fan base. And Evercade rewards that by allowing VS and XP owners play free downloadable indie games each month picked out by their Discord community. Like this month was a remastered version of Bayou. And I really had fun with this game. I never heard of it before, and to be frank, I spent as much time with this game as I did with the remasters of Duke Nukem 1 and 2. And also, Evercade does offer exclusive in-house developed games that are downloadable onto your hardware with each update called hidden games. You find these by entering button combinations in the game startup menu or through codes found on their newsletter or website. And so far the games that I've found are like Sword and Stone, a 2D action-adventure game inspired by D&D. I played it for a bit. It's okay considering it's a free game, probably made by one person in a broom closet somewhere, but it's the standout. The rest are novelty games that you play once and never touch again. But I will admit, There's a lot of potential here, especially if Evercade keeps their current momentum. Just recently they released the Banjo-Kazooie collection and have implemented mouse support for the VS system. It's still in the beta, but that might change after I finally post this video. And fingers crossed, since they got Rare on board and almost released all their games up to Banjo-Kazooie, maybe we'll get a release of a certain other game? Hey, if Evercade is fiddling with mouse support, I won't turn my nose up to an Evercade version of GoldenEye. A version of GoldenEye with mouse support is something that Xbox and Switch does not have right now. Now, would I recommend someone who already collects games to get on the Evercade bandwagon? I suggest going through the catalog at least. If you already own most of these titles or emulate them through other sources, then no. Evercade in its current form doesn't offer anything new to warrant repurchasing the titles that you already own, and even though I do like a lot about Evercade, until they have enough exclusives to offer, I would hold off on punching that purchase button. But keep an eye on them. If they're willing to bring back Duke Nukem 1 and 2, no telling what else they'll bring back. And who knows, it could be My Sense of Wonder.